welcome back to the Who is Will Sims podcast. And today I have a very special episode. It's one of those things, when I thought about doing the podcast, the idea of doing something like this excited me because I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd for Marvel and I'm a nerd for lists. And so this is me scratching both of those itches. And so this is a list. This is a Marvel ranking, and I'm going to be ranking top 100 Marvel releases. And initially, when I started making this list, I was trying to keep it MCU and MCU adjacent. So I was thinking Spider-Man movies, the X-Men now because they're starting to bring them in with the recent movies. And then I was just like, I was getting really high up on the list of things, and I was like, you know what, let's just see if I can get to 100. And, at first I wasn't trying to do anything animated. Then I started adding animated things in there so I could get to 100. So going to start at the bottom, work my way up, going to talk a little bit about each release. These are all things that I've seen. So I've seen these movies and shows. Some of them it may have been when I was a kid. Some of them may have been, 10 years ago. So I'm going off of memory here. It's, and obviously this is my opinion on these things. But feel free to leave your comments and tell me if you think I'm crazy, or maybe I need to go back and rewatch something. Or if I don't mention something here and you think, man, you like that, you're going to love this, go check it out. So let's get started because it's 100 things and it's gonna, I want to give each thing a little bit of time because, people worked hard on making these movies. The people put time and effort in, and sometimes it's not their fault when the studio decides they don't want to put money into something or hire a better writer or, wait till the right moment to make something. So I'm going to say the first 10 or so items on this list are like things that I think are just pretty generally bad for one reason or another. So starting off at number 100, we have Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, or Ghost Rider 2, essentially, with Nicolas Cage. I liked the first one. I thought it was a fun time. I wasn't like a huge Ghost Rider guy, but being able to see it on the screen was cool, and the idea that maybe they could do crossovers and stuff like that. But the movie was so bad, I really couldn't get through it. I tried watching it a couple times. I really didn't pay much attention at all. I didn't even realize, I know Idris Elba was in it, but I didn't really know who he was at the time. I didn't realize Christopher Lambert was in it. He was basically unrecognizable. He's gotten old. I mean, I will always remember him as Raiden and, and also a little bit as the Highlander, but just pretty generally not a good movie. I know there's a lot of stories about how they cut the budgets on it and this and that, and they basically had to finish the movie with next to no money. But, it's got Nick Cage in it, and just seeing him go nuts sometimes can be a redeeming factor. So, next thing is number 99, the Inhumans TV show. So, most of my knowledge of the Inhumans comes from the games. They kind of been sprinkling them in here and there. And so I was excited to see them get brought to the big screen. There's always the excitement in the Marvel universe when you introduce like a new element to it. That's one of the things I felt like made the MCU up to Endgame so exciting, was the introduction of new aspects of it, and then how it's all brought together. And I think initially, they were planning on bringing the Inhumans in, and having characters like that could have gone up against Thanos would have been really interesting, because you've got characters like Crystal who can control the elements. You've got Black Bolt who, if you've seen Multiverse of Madness, he's a powerful character, but he hasn't really had his chance to shine. And then Medusa, who can control her hair. But obviously, what makes this so low on the list is that the show was just not good. The actors tried. There were a couple redeeming things about it. I mean, casting Iwan Ryan. I don't know how to say his name. He was on Game of Thrones, and he was a really good bad guy on that. And so having him as Maximus, it was like cool, more of a good thing. Sadly, he didn't get much to work with. I liked the concept of Karnak is a character that can like see possibilities and plan everything really well, whereas Gorgon is this very spontaneous, very off the rails, kind of in the moment kind of character. And in the show, they're kind of forced to think the way the other one does in a couple instances, which kind of made that a little interesting. But then you got things like we've got Medusa who can control her hair, and that's like her main power. And they shave her head in like one of the first episodes to take it away, and then it doesn't come back before the end of the show, so you basically get none of that power. And then obviously Black Bolt doesn't really get any chances to use his power because if he talks at all, he'll destroy everything. And so, it ended up just kind of being a dud of a show. Even if they, I don't always feel like just because something's bad, that means stop it and don't reference it ever again, which is kind of the way Marvel operates. It's like, oh man, they didn't like that. Let's never talk about it ever again. And maybe they'll forget about it. Like they could have, kept the show as it was and then worked in little things here and there and kind of redeemed it in some ways, but it's pretty clear they don't want to mess around with it too much more. They brought in Anson Mount for Multiverse of Madness as a little tribute to the show, but I don't think there's going to be much more of that. Number 98, I've got Hellstrom, which was on Hulu, based on the character Hellstorm. Again, just kind of a dud of a show. It's kind of like a supernatural thriller, and there were a couple good things about it, but I think what sucked the most about it was that it just they didn't really want to do anything to try to connect it to the Marvel universe, and I feel like that's the kind of the thing that makes these shows interesting. And the actors that play the two leads were solid. I liked their chemistry with each other and how they worked together. And I'd like to see them come back and play the characters again, but maybe in a better show. But it was just kind of like a poor man's Exorcist type show, and you don't really get a lot of that. What makes the character interesting in the comics? Not that I read the comics, but I've seen the characters in games, and to me, he's just kind of this very powerful, hellish force. And in the show, you don't really get a lot of that element. It just kind of feels like, oh, we only had so much money, so we made this kind of supernatural mystery show, and it just feels like the TV show Supernatural at its worst, and it doesn't really land. So next up, I have at 97, I have I Am Groot, which I don't have it here because it's bad. There's just not a lot to it. It's clearly made for kids. It's a fun little show. I'm not gonna talk about it too much here. I'm gonna move on to the next thing. Number 96, I have X-Men Origins Wolverine. And, the X-Men are probably my top tier Marvel property. I didn't care when it was a Fox. I thought Fox did just as good did just as good with it as Disney has done with Marvel, And I know a lot of people wanted Marvel to have it back, but they wanted it back so we could have the crossovers that we want. And that's cool and all. I just think that, just like with most of the stuff, they have a little bit of success with the movies, so they try to rush to get more of them made. And what gets sacrificed is like the story and the script, and you get characters thrown in for no reason. I thought Taylor Kitsch in it was, could have been a really good Gambit, but he doesn't really get a lot to work with. I liked Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth. Again, didn't get a lot to work with. Probably the best thing about this movie is that it led to Ryan Reynolds becoming Deadpool in his own movies. So, yeah. Other than that, trying to think of they had a lot of characters in it that we wanted to see, but what's the point of having the character if you're not going to do anything interesting with them? Like, they just have them there to progress the plot forward, So, yeah, this movie was a pretty big disappointment to me. I felt like it's really hard to think of redeeming qualities about it. I mean, it's shot okay. It's acted okay. Obviously, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is always entertaining, but to me, it was his worst performance as that character. All right, right above at 95, I've got Blade Trinity. The only reason this movie is above Wolverine is because I thought Ryan Reynolds was hilarious in it as a kid. I thought there were a lot of entertaining things about the movie. That said, I haven't seen it in a very long time. Since then, I've seen a lot of interviews about the type of things they had to deal with making the movie, but I remember thinking it was cool that Dracula was in it. I thought that, the action scenes were pretty solid. Jessica Biel was good in it. But, maybe it's one of those ones, if I go back and watch it one day, it would change I would change my perspective of it. All right, at number 94, we have X-Men Dark Phoenix, which to me it's pretty bad in the terms of they had a second chance to make a great Dark Phoenix movie, and again, I feel like the thing that's supposed to make it interesting is not there. The dynamic between Cyclops and Jean Grey, and him trying to do everything he can to save her, and she's going off the rails and potentially destroying the whole universe. And instead, they've got this weird alien plot thing where there's aliens trying to take over the planet, and you've got the X-Men, half the X-Men who want to destroy Jean, half the X-Men that want to save Jean, and then you've got Magneto who wants to destroy Jean, and there's this whole thing where they're fighting each other, which to me was the best part of the movie. There's a scene where they are in the streets fighting each other, and you get to actually see James McAvoy as Professor X in a battle, having to use his abilities to combat enemies without just taking them out. So that to me was probably one of the better parts of the movie. But in general, yeah, it felt like this was supposed to be Dark Phoenix, and it felt like the concept of Phoenix was wasted on this other plot again. They couldn't figure out how to just write a good movie about wanting to save Phoenix. And maybe it's because they didn't have Wolverine. I always feel like part of the interesting dynamic of Jean Grey is the love triangle between Cyclops and Wolverine, and that Cyclops is like this. He wants to do what he can to save her, but Wolverine's willing to do anything to save her, and that was obviously missing from the movie, and I felt like that really hurt it at the end. That said, and I know they reshot the third act of the movie. it's a shame because they put some really cool action scenes at the end of the movie, but in terms of the story, they're just pointless, you know. All right, number 93, the Daredevil movie. So I don't remember this being a bad movie as a kid. Obviously, when I was that young, I was just happy to see any of these characters come to the big screen was an exciting thought. But yeah, I think I still recognize like they kind of had that weird CGI where like instead of having someone do stunts, they had like a CGI character flipping off rooftops. But I like the idea of Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin because he's just like that big dude that like you don't want to mess with, and he'll just like take you out. And then obviously Jon Favreau as Foggy, is entertaining because it kind of leads to that. Who he is now in the MCU is hilarious. And then you've got Ben Affleck as Matt Murdock, who I thought did okay in the role. So yeah. All right, number 92, I have She-Hulk. That first actual, well, I guess if you count I Am Groot, but I Am Groot feels more like a cartoon spinoff than, but I'm not gonna disregard it. She-Hulk is like the first live action, TV show that's MCU based, and I couldn't really get into it that much. I liked Tatiana Maslany as She-Hulk. She is a great casting. I didn't think the writing on the show did her any favors. Obviously, seeing the Hulk was great. Bringing back Daredevil was great. I wasn't all butthurt by how he was portrayed. I felt like he fit into the show and he wasn't like turned into like a joke of the character he was before. He kind of had a little bit of funny banter, and he got to have some cool action sequences. And getting to see him go up against She-Hulk was pretty cool. It didn't seem like just some pushover fight. But they tried to do the whole thing at the end of the show where they break the fourth wall. I didn't think that was good. I think I wanted payoff to the story. Usually at the end of these Marvel shows, what I want is payoff for the story that's been told so far. And I feel like that's where a lot of them miss, is they don't pay off. It's just like, we've set up a lot of things that could happen, but we're just going to punch each other in the face for 20 minutes and then be like, all right, cool, we'll answer all your questions later. So, that's how I feel about a lot of the TV shows that they've done. So, yeah, She-Hulk was kind of a disappointment. All right, next up I have the Fantastic Four reboot, which was the one with Miles Teller and Kate Mara. I watched it. It was, it was a cohesive movie. I guess you could say it was a movie. But I think the thing that really kind of hurt it was, I've read a lot about the troubles behind the scenes. The director was trying to make one movie, the studio wanted a different movie. But I just felt like watching it was kind of boring, and there's one good scene with Doctor Doom where he's just messing shit up. But other than that, it was kind of a mess. So that's really all I have to say about that movie. I was pretty disappointed. At number 90, I have Generation X. And some of you probably may not even know what this movie was. It was a made-for-TV movie that came out in 96. So remember seeing it when I was a kid. This was the closest thing we had to an X-Men movie because it had Jubilee in it. It had Emma Frost and Banshee, and it just was one of those movies where we got to see a little bit of what, and I think they actually used the X Mansion from the X-Men movies to shoot at some of the Xavier school scenes. But I remember just the idea of having a movie like that, and I also remember just like a lot of scenes from that movie like that stick with me. There's like a scene where they're sitting in a restaurant and the mutants are at one table, like the mutant characters, and then there's like some other high school kids at another table, and one of the guys is looking at the other guy at the other table, and they just keep taking like these really big bites of food, like to try to outdo each other, and it just felt like me and my brother sitting at like the kitchen table, trying to out eat each other. Like, look, I could put half a slice of pizza in my mouth. Yeah, well, I could put the whole slice in my mouth. Yeah, well, I could bite half of this burger off, and that was just that's just one of those scenes. Like, it's stuck with me because it's such a in terms of the movie, it's inconsequential, but it's still entertaining. And I always felt like that movie should have gotten a little more love. Even like I said, it's one of those things that's bad. Like, it's almost like the Star Wars. It was not quite as bad as the Star Wars Christmas special, but the idea that like there's people that appreciate that, and there was people that were excited about that at one point. So having the Generation X movie, like and it could be one of those things where it's kind of in like this intellectual property limbo where the people that own it aren't around anymore, and maybe the company that bought it got filed bankruptcy, so like no one really knows who owns it, and there's no one who really has like access to it, so it's just kind of this like weird thing where you can't really do anything with it, which is kind of weird, but they should figure something out about that. But yeah, Generation X, I have fond memories of it. Whether it was, even if I went back and watched it and it was like bad, I think I would still appreciate it for what it was. It's kind of like, most, like a lot of kids' movies where like you go back and you watch it, like this is clearly for kids, but it's still entertaining and it's still fun. All right, at number 89, I have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. To me, the Venom movies have been pretty mid. And I would say from here up, like from, the last one up, these are all movies or releases that I thought were generally good, but maybe not amazing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go up the list, but Let There Be Carnage, it was one that was like I had a lot of hopes for, because Carnage is, I've seen the Spider-Man cartoon and I played the Spider-Man games, and like Carnage was just one of those dudes, like, I know you couldn't like portray him the way that he's kind of presented as the serial killer that gets like, the symbiote and can, basically just kill it at kill anybody he wants at any time. But this movie felt like they really wasted him. Like they clearly should have went for the R rating, and they should have really like given him the chance to show just how bad of a dude he is and why we need Venom to kind of take him off the board, but felt like a waste. And Woody Harrelson was great in the role. Naomi Harris's Shriek was pretty good. I liked the idea they wanted to be together, but they her abilities were kind of like his weakness. And so at the end of the day, it felt kind of rushed, but you know, like the kind of like the ending of the whole idea of like him escaping and Venom going after him and stuff. Like it kind of felt like they rushed through like some of those elements of the storytelling of, you know, of like kind of building up the idea that she could be his weakness. You know, they could have played that more emotionally, you know, because, you know, I think Woody Harrelson's a tremendous actor, and that was a great role for him, but I feel like he really didn't get a lot of opportunities to shine in that movie. All right. Next I've got at 88, I have Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. I remember liking these movies a lot as a kid. I haven't seen this one in a long time. I know that this one was kind of regarded as a pretty big step down from the first one, and the first one wasn't even like highly acclaimed. But obviously, Chris Evans killed it in everything he does. Michael Chiklis as the Thing was an amazing casting. You know, I wouldn't be sad if they brought him back in some way to be the Thing. Lawrence Fishburne as the voice of Silver Surfer, excellent. So, even like the guy that plays Doctor Doom, Julian McMahon, I think he sells that character well. He's got that villainous aspect, but also like the charm. But he's also like, you know, he's like, he wants to take over the world, but he doesn't want it to be destroyed. You know, like he kind of walks that line of like, you know, that I think Doctor Doom needs to be able to walk. All right, at number 87, I have the Elektra movie, which to me, I generally liked that movie. I thought it was pretty good. Obviously, you know, it's when a lot of times when I watch these movies, I kind of want to see like a villain that I know, and this was one of those ones where it didn't really have a villain that I was kind of, you know, aware of. You know, maybe maybe the villains were based in the comics. I don't know, but having I know that they had Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa in it, who played Shang Tsung in the first Mortal Kombat movie, and just seeing him in anything always just makes me happy because he's just such a epic badass. It has begun. I realize I need to drink water when I'm doing this because it just destroys my voice. So yeah, Elektra was a good time. All right, right above Elektra, 86, I got Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion, again, felt like a pretty big disappointment. Obviously Samuel L. Jackson is a great actor, and this is a great chance for him to shine and show a lot of different, you know, facets of his abilities, a lot of different sides of his abilities. But you know, like we had a lot of great characters in the MCU. We had Maria Hill and Talos, and they both don't make it out of this series, which I thought was kind of a bummer. I think Kingsley Ben-Adir is a great actor. I felt like they won't, you know, the idea of his character was good, but like they didn't really reveal enough about him until the very end of the show. And so you really have no grounds for kind of understanding what he's going through and why he's doing what he's doing. You know, so it was just one of those shows where they kind of, you're watching it and you're going, man, like it'd be really cool if they did this. It'd be really cool if they did that. And they don't do any of it. They just kind of really take the safest, straightest route to the end of the show. And to me, that kind of felt like a real letdown in terms of writing and just like really making an intriguing show. And to me, like it had nothing to do with having the Avengers or not having the Avengers. To me, this was like a really bad version of the show The Following. If you've never seen The Following, it has Kevin Bacon and Sean Ashmore, he was in the X-Men movies as Iceman, and they play these I don't know what their exact roles are, but they're trying to stop this serial killer who has a cult following. And what's crazy about the show is like there's all these scenes where like you like they're running from these cult followers, and then you think like, and then like so two police officers will show up, and they'll be like, oh man, thank goodness, like, we needed help, and then one of the police officers will shoot the other one and will be like, well, I'm actually in the cult, and it's like you just never know what to expect because there's all these twists and turns of like, every time you think that you're safe, there's another person that turns, or another person that pops up, and like you just kind of feel like the cult is this force of nature. And that's where I felt like they had this opportunity with Skrulls to kind of be like, at any turn, every time they thought that they were safe, the Skrulls could have popped up out of anywhere and been a threat. But it felt like, most of the time it was just like, oh, we're going to this place and there's going to be Skrulls there. Oh, okay, well, there's no tension there. I know that Samuel L. Jackson's not going to die in some little scuffle that, that they're planning to go into. But, when you kind of get that vibe of like anything could happen at any point, then you kind of get on the edge of your seat of like, wait a minute, could he bite it right now, And I felt like Maria Hill got off way too early. Like you don't really get a chance to. I feel like in general we haven't really had much time with her, and I mean, she was on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show. She got a little bit of time there, but again, they never really dive into her character. They never really talk about why she does what she does. She's just always kind of been there on the sidelines, and I felt like at the very least she kind of deserved the chance to maybe take over Nick Fury's spot at some point, but she never got that opportunity. So pretty sad to me. I think that was kind of a waste. They wasted a lot of great opportunities in the show, and sadly, I was pretty disappointed. All right, at 85, I have Hulk the Ang Lee movie. 2003. Yeah, man, I mean, I had pretty fond memories of this movie. I thought Eric Bana was a good actor. I think he can deliver the dramatic presence, of being Bruce Banner and the Hulk. But, I feel like this was kind of when CGI wasn't quite what it is now. Jennifer Connelly is kind of, one of my secret crushes. So she's amazing in the movie. She does a great job of kind of being that character that has to calm the Hulk down and kind of like confront her father, because her father, Thunderbolt Ross, is after the Hulk. I felt like Sam Elliott did a pretty good job in the role. I'm actually surprised I'm surprised they didn't get him to come back and play him, because, what's his name? John Hurt. Is it John Hurt? Let me just double check. I think John Hurt's the one who just passed away, and he was playing. No, John Hurt's a different actor. Thunderbolt Ross. I've been getting really bad with remembering people's names, so I do have. There we go. William Hurt. William Hurt was really great as Thunderbolt Ross. And I feel like Sam Elliott probably could have filled that role pretty well. I'm curious to see how Harrison Ford's going to handle it in the upcoming movie, taking over his role. But yeah, William Hurt passing away. Sad. Rest in peace, buddy. Great actor. So Yeah, I mean, Josh Lucas was in this movie. He kind of disappeared for a while there. I mean, I remember him being kind of a big deal for a minute there. But yeah, this was I thought a pretty entertaining movie. All right, right above it at 84, I got Cloak and Dagger. Now, Cloak and Dagger is a show I really liked. I liked, I, I liked the idea of it. I felt like, again, I feel like you kind of ask yourself, what's the point? Like, why are we bringing these characters in? And I feel like they kind of rush sometimes to. They were kind of rushing to put out a lot of shows and introduce a lot of characters, and in some instances it worked. Like The Runaways was a good show, and it's like kind of like its own thing. But they also like they reference a lot of stuff that happens in the MCU, or they reference some of the stuff that's happening in the MCU in The Runaways, whereas like this show didn't do it as much, I feel. But there was still this element of the show where it felt like it could be in that universe, and they were really kind of bringing a lot of characters in that are from the comics, so they weren't like weren't dragging their feet so much in terms of introducing characters in this show. I'm trying to think of a way to talk about it without going, because I did like the show, but there's it felt like a lot of filler. To me, it might have been cool as like a made for TV movie. And, if they kind of condensed the elements of the show down, it wouldn't feel like such a drag to watch, And that's not saying that I don't think that there was bad acting. I don't think that there was, really, and I don't think there was a lot of bad things about the show, but it was just like one of those things where it's like, look, another Marvel thing, and like how much it's going to be incorporated is dependent upon how successful it is. And it's really hard to get people to invest in a show because a show like is a lot of hours, and this one I think was like 10 or 12 episodes a season. So that's like watching 6 movies, And so sometimes I think like having something like this, it might have worked better as like just a short movie. And then like a couple years later, they did like another movie, and maybe you just have the 2 movies and then you can kind of go from there. But, asking people to watch a whole show and then never paying it off, like, is kind of a bummer. But, they had some comic characters in there, like Despair was the villain of season 2. You don't really they were still kind of in the realm of like giving, they didn't call him Despair, but or maybe they did, or he mentioned the word, but Despair in the comics is like this ghostly type of creature, and in the show he was just a dude that played jazz to steal people's like life force energy. But the 2 main actors, Olivia Holt and Aubrey Joseph, I felt like are good as Cloak and Dagger. I liked their chemistry. They feel like if Marvel wanted to bring them back, they could. Maybe they can do that in a way where people might be interested and go back and watching the show. But yeah, just in general, like it's hard to talk about it's hard to talk about this show in particular because, like I said, I did watch it. I watched the whole thing. I was intrigued. There's a couple like really really well done turns and stuff like that, but just in general, like it's hard to say like you should go watch that show. Like, because people's time is valuable. Like, I can't recommend you go watch it if there's better shows to watch. So yeah, that's where I'll leave off with that one. All right, at number 83, I've got Spider-Man 3. And we all know the story of Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 killed the original Spider-Man franchise. We all we all appreciated Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, and I think we were all looking forward to that movie. I remember hearing that Venom was going to be in it and being excited, and then being disappointed when I left the movie. You know, I didn't really know Topher Grace that well, but in retrospect, I see now how horribly miscast that was. So, yeah, Spider-Man 3 was pretty mid. I thought that Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman was a great cast, and I really felt like the movie should have focused on him. And I liked the dynamic that, you know, he actually killed Peter Parker's uncle, but it was an accident, and, you know, he was just trying to get money to save his daughter, and, you know, so there were really good elements there, but I could tell how, like, them trying to cram a bunch of other stuff into the movie kind of hurt it at the end. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Spider-Man 3. I mean, it's okay. It's fun to watch. Sometimes I see it on TV and I'm like, hey man, it's a fun movie, but like you can just kind of see how like Sam Raimi got to make 1 and 2 and he made them really well. And then the studio was like, like, well, the people like this, you got to put this in there. And then they started like trying to make Spider-Man 3 instead of Sam Raimi, and he kind of gave in and gave them what they wanted. And then when the movie did bad, they were like, you know, they probably held it against him. They were probably like, you ruined our movie, meh. But yeah. So, well, hey, now there's a chance they're going to make Spider-Man 4, so we'll see what happens there. All right. So, been here a while. I might break this up into a couple segments, but I'm going to go to 75 here. So we've still got a few more to go. So at number 82, I've got Fantastic Four, which is, to me, when I was a kid, I really liked the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. The casting I thought was pretty solid. You know, I don't know much about I didn't know much about Jessica Alba then, but I thought she was fine in the role. I thought Ian Grufford, I think is his name. Ian Grufford. Sometimes people have their names spelled, and it's Ian or Ion Grufford. I feel bad butchering all these names. Anyways, you know, I felt like he did a good job as Mr. Fantastic. I already mentioned Michael Chiklis and Chris Evans. You know, I felt like they had good chemistry. They were fun to watch. Dr. Doom as a villain was perfect. It had everything you wanted. It had a great team of heroes and a great villain. And watching them go to head to head was great. And yeah, that's all I can say about that movie. At 81, I have Ghost Rider. I really liked Ghost Rider as a kid, in terms of like the concept of the character. In terms of like him versus other characters, like I didn't know a lot about him, but I know that he showed up in like he would show up more in like some of the games than some of the other characters that, you know, have been on this list. And, you know, I always thought he was just cool, you know, as a dude with a flaming skull. So I always thought he was badass. And, you know, Nicolas Cage in the role I thought was excellent. And, yeah, and then having Mephisto and Blackheart in it. I remember being disappointed that you didn't see like their demon forms in the movie, but, you know, I also understand you're paying these actors to be in the movie, so you want them to be in there. But, you know, good time. At number 80, I've got The Gifted. The Gifted was a TV show, and I would say like it would have been lower on the list, but I feel like for the show that it was done really well. Like it's based around a family, and it's in an X-Men universe, but it's never really specified if it was like in the movie universe or if it was in its own universe. But like, they kind of had some side characters and they made it work. Having Thunderbird and Emma Frost, or not Emma Frost, the three twins, the Cuckoos as they're called, the daughters of Emma Frost, and then Polaris. So I had like characters that weren't in the X-Men movies. So in my head, it was part of the movie continuity, but there's also like elements of it that I think contradict that. But yeah, I think it had 2 seasons, and Amy Acker, got to give a shout out to her because I always loved Angel as a kid. So having her in there was awesome as the mom of the family. But yeah, the I felt like they handled the X-Men aspect of it really well. Like mutants being hunted down and having to hide and constantly being under threat. I felt like that was done really well. And then there was always kind of that tease that they would incorporate the X-Men in at some point, but sadly the show got canceled before then. But for the 2 seasons they had, it was pretty solid. So I'll give them that. All right, next up at number 79, we have Miss Marvel. Now, Miss Marvel was not a bad show by any stretch. I just felt like it was lacking. It was lacking in the villain department. Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel is an amazing casting. She embodies that character so much, and her joy and excitement carries the show. But like the other characters in the show, the villain characters, like they never really, they're not. I don't know if they're based on any sort of any characters in the comics. They were kind of just made up for the show, and to me, they're nothing more than just, we've got to destroy your world so that we can live or whatever. So yeah, there was kind of this weird kind of element to it in terms of the villains, but in general, I feel like Iman Vellani got to shine. I'd love to see a season 2 of the show, and give her more chances to be this great character that I feel like could really pump some energy into the MCU moving forward. All right, number 78, I've got Morbius. Morbius wasn't as bad as everyone made it sound. Everyone made it sound like it was the worst movie ever made, but it really wasn't. I think there's a lot of people that are going to hold the fact that Jared Leto's in it against it, but I think that he's fine in the movie. I think that Matt Smith is great as the villain. I liked their dynamic together. There's definitely an element of like they could have done a little bit of better job with selling their relationship and making it more of an emotional turn. But I feel like Matt Smith just kind of, really dials it up to 100 there when he gets his abilities, and Morbius has got to take him out. But in general, I like Jared Leto in the role. I'd like to see him come back and do some more. I'd like to see him get to go up against Spider-Man. There's a tease at the end of the movie that they're going to do that. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, in general, I thought it was pretty enjoyable watch. At number 77, I have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought it was okay. You know, obviously, they were trying really hard to jam pack as many. They were really trying to do what Marvel was doing, so it felt like they were really trying to jam those, like, the setups for more movies into one movie. But I feel like Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are just electric on screen together. They really sell that relationship, and you feel terrible at the end of the movie when what happens to her. Yeah, so I mean, and yeah, I felt like Jamie Foxx's Electro was kind of weird. It was definitely like, him. He was kind of this. I guess you could call him. He kind of turned into kind of like a sociopath kind of villain, and then when he's in No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, he's kind of just like Jamie Foxx. He's not the same character, but it's just a little minor thing, though. I tried to let those little things bother me. It wasn't really that big of a deal. But yeah, the best way to kill your franchise is to kill the big Spider-Man villain off and before the movie even gets going. And that's what they did to Green Goblin. So yeah. All right, at 76, I have Iron Fist, the TV show on Netflix. If they adjusted the first season, the show would be a lot lower on the list. Because to me, the first season was pretty boring. Had a boring villain. I mean, the Netflix shows were doing a really good job of interconnecting with each other, which kind of kept it a little bit interesting. But the villain being like the dad of his, like, two friends, I know that actor has done good stuff, but in this he was just kind of like a weird kind of character. But they don't handle the fish out of water stuff that great. Danny Rand kind of comes off as, more of a brat than this kind of Zen type of martial artist that's been stuck training in, the mountains somewhere for his whole life, and then coming back to claim his family's, empire or whatever. I feel like Finn Jones could have done better if he had been given better stuff to work with, but and I felt like that showed in the Defenders show and in Iron Fist season 2. But in this first season, he just kind of comes off as kind of bleh. But that said, Colleen Wing, Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing, it was like the saving grace of this show, because she was definitely one of the most interesting characters, and she brought great energy to the show, and her and Danny together were kind of really elevated that. And then the other thing is that I felt like season 2 was such a step up in regards of like the way that they were kind of bringing stuff together. Alice Eve as Typhoid Mary was like a home run casting. She does great in the role. Like, the idea that they might not ever explore that character more is sad to me. And that to me is like the sign of, like, I really enjoyed the show. Because they really set up, because she has, what's the word? She has multiple personality disorder. So, like, you get to see this innocent type of personality that is kind of like, just, innocent, kind of not really like, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this. Just a very innocent type of person, kind of very gullible is what the word that I was looking for. And then you've got like this assassin, hitman, John Wick type personality that she has, and then they kind of tease that there's this other personality that's like has like superpowers and can just mess shit up, but you never really get to see any of that. It's just hinted at. But yeah, like, you know, it had Tom Pelphrey, who went on and did Ozark, and he was great in that. I felt like in the first season he kind of, to me it was like he was kind of okay in the first season, but in the second season he was much more enjoyable to watch. And then like Jessica Stroup as like the sister was a pretty good casting too. So it was a show that I felt like had a lot of potential to get better, but obviously Netflix canceled it, and then, you know, we'll see if Marvel even acknowledges its existence in any of these future properties. So that's it. We're up to 76 now. So next time I will start at 75, and we'll go down from there.